Welcome to Romance Files. Please like this video and subscribe to Romance Files. Emma and Jack sat down to dinner in their cozy home, much like they had done every evening for the past 10 years. But tonight, the air between them was thick, and silence hung over the table. Emma had barely touched her food, her eyes distant as they moved from her plate to the flickering candle on the table. Jack noticed the shift in her mood. He could sense that something was different, but instead of saying anything, he waited for her to speak. Emma's face was calm, yet there was a storm of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. After what felt like an eternity, she set her fork down and took a deep breath. "Jack," she began softly, her voice unusually quiet, "I've been thinking a lot lately." Jack looked up from his plate, his heart starting to pound. "What's on your mind?" he asked cautiously. Emma hesitated. She had been rehearsing this moment in her head for weeks, but now that it was here, the words seemed so much harder to say out loud. "We've been together for over 10 years, she said slowly, "and I feel like our marriage has become bland. We're stuck in a routine, Jack. It's like we're just going through the motions. I need something more." Jack's heart sank. This wasn't the first time he'd felt a sense of distance between them, but hearing Emma say it out loud made it feel more real, more painful. "Bland?" Jack echoed, his voice trembling. "Emma, what are you saying?" Emma sighed, trying to gather the courage to continue. "I think I need space. I need time away from this, from us. I need to figure out who I am outside of this marriage." Jack stared at her, his fork frozen in midair. "Space?" he whispered, his throat tight. "What does that even mean? Are you leaving me?" Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but she fought them back. "I'm not leaving you forever," she said softly. "I just need some time alone. I need 5 months, no contact. I need to figure things out on my own." Her words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He felt the air leave his lungs, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. 5 months? He repeated, as if saying it would help him make sense of it. "No contact?" Emma nodded, her hands trembling slightly. "I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like it's the only way. I need time to think, to find myself. I don't want to hurt you, but I feel like this is the best thing for both of us." Jack's mind was spinning. He had no idea what to say, no idea how to respond to the woman he loved asking for a break. They had built a life together, spent a decade creating memories, and now she wanted to walk away, at least for a while. "I don't understand," Jack whispered. "We've always had each other, Emma. Why now?" Emma lowered her gaze, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Because I've lost touch with myself, Jack. I've lost the excitement, the passion, and I don't recognize who I am anymore. I just need time to figure that out." Jack sat there in stunned silence, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He wanted to argue, to beg her to stay, but deep down, he knew that if Emma wasn't happy, there was nothing he could do to change that. The next morning, Emma packed her things. Jack sat silently on the edge of their bed, watching as she carefully placed a few clothes, books, and personal items into a suitcase. His heart was breaking, but he couldn't find the words to stop her before she left. Emma paused by the door, turning back to look at Jack one last time. "I'm leaving," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack wanted to tell her not to go, wanted to pull her into his arms and promise that they could fix things together, but the words stuck in his throat, and all he could do was nod. With one final glance, Emma turned and walked out the door, the sound of it closing behind her echoing through the house. Jack sat there, his mind numb as he realized that everything he had known, everything he had counted on, was slipping away. Days turned into weeks, and Jack found himself wandering aimlessly through the house that had once been filled with laughter and love. The emptiness consumed him. Each morning he woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream, but the cold, silent reality of Emma's absence greeted him instead. Jack tried to go about his daily life, throwing himself into his work at the advertising firm, but nothing could distract him from the gnawing loneliness that ate away at him. He missed Emma's presence, the sound of her voice, the way she would hum while cooking dinner, the simple comfort of knowing she was there. He thought about calling her, but every time he picked up the phone, he stopped himself. She had asked for no contact, and as much as it hurt, Jack wanted to respect her wishes. So he waited, counting the days until the 5 months were up, wondering if Emma would come back to him. But as the days dragged on, Jack began to realize that his love for Emma might not be enough to save their marriage. He started questioning everything. Had he been blind to the cracks in their relationship? Had he ignored the signs that Emma was unhappy? One evening, after a particularly long and exhausting day at work, Jack found himself sitting alone in the living room, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Pictures of their wedding day, vacations they had taken, moments of joy frozen in time. But now they only served as a painful reminder of what he had lost. Just as he was sinking deeper into his thoughts, the doorbell rang. Jack stood up, surprised, and opened the door to find Tara, an old friend he hadn't seen in years. Tara had heard through mutual friends about the trouble in Jack's marriage, and she had come to check on him. At first, Jack was hesitant to open up, but as the evening wore on, he found himself pouring out his heart to Tara. She listened, offering quiet support, and for the first time in weeks, Jack felt a small sense of relief. Tara had her own story of heartbreak, a relationship that had ended in betrayal, and she understood Jack's pain in a way that few others could. Over the next few weeks, Tara became a constant presence in Jack's life. They spent evenings together, talking about their struggles, their pasts, and slowly, a bond began to form. Tara was different from Emma. She was warm, compassionate, and had an easy way of making Jack feel at ease. As they spent more time together, Jack started to feel a spark that he hadn't felt in years. But even as his connection with Tara grew, Jack couldn't shake the memories of Emma. Every time he thought about moving on, guilt crept in, reminding him that he was still technically married. As Jack struggled with his feelings back home, Emma was on her own journey of self-discovery. The first few weeks of her newfound freedom felt liberating. She traveled to the coast, rented a small apartment, and spent her days trying to reconnect with herself. Long walks on the beach, new hobbies, meeting people. Emma tried everything to fill the void that had grown within her over the years, but the excitement she had expected quickly faded. At night, alone in her small apartment, Emma often found herself thinking of Jack. She missed his steady presence, his warm smile, and even the small everyday moments they had shared. The distance she had craved now felt like an empty chasm she didn't know how to cross. Emma tried to bury her loneliness by spending time with new friends. She met a group of women at a yoga class who were also going through transitions in their lives. They bonded over drinks and late-night conversations, each sharing stories of breakups, self-exploration, and new beginnings. But as Emma listened to their stories, she felt a growing sense of disconnection. While they spoke excitedly about new relationships and adventures, Emma found herself longing for something deeper. Something she realized she had lost the moment she walked out on Jack. One evening, while sitting with her new friends at a cafe, Emma's phone buzzed with a message from an old colleague, Sarah. It was a simple message, but it triggered a flood of memories. "I saw you and Jack aren't together anymore. How are you holding out?" Emma stared at the message, her heart sinking. She hadn't spoken to anyone from her old life in months, and seeing Jack's name brought a wave of guilt and regret crashing over her. She hadn't thought about how her absence had affected him. In all her attempts to find herself, she had forgotten about the man she had left behind. Emma left the cafe early that night, her thoughts swirling. For the first time, she admitted to herself that maybe she had made a mistake. The freedom she had been chasing felt hollow, and the adventure she had sought had left her feeling more lost than ever. She spent the next few days in a state of reflection. She thought about the love she had once shared with Jack, the home they had built together, and the life they had created. Slowly, the realization began to sink in. Her happiness had never been tied to external experiences or freedom. It had always been with Jack. Meanwhile, Jack's relationship with Tara was deepening. Their shared moments had begun to take on a different tone, shifting from the comfort of friendship to something more. Jack wasn't sure how it had happened, but he found himself drawn to Tara in ways he hadn't expected. Tara had been a rock for him during some of his darkest moments. She understood his pain, listened without judgment, and offered him a sense of stability that he hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, after a long walk through the city, Jack found himself standing on Tara's doorstep, unsure of what to say. "Do you want to come in?" Tara asked softly, sensing his hesitation. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the unspoken tension between them. As they sat together in her living room, the conversation flowed easily at first, but eventually, the silence between them grew heavier, and Jack found himself staring into Tara's eyes, searching for answers. "I don't know what this is," Jack finally said, his voice uncertain. "I wasn't looking for something like this, but I can't deny how I feel." Tara smiled sadly, understanding his dilemma. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Jack. We've both been through a lot. I'm not asking for anything more than what you're ready to give." Her words were gentle, but they left a mark on Jack's heart. For the first time since Emma had left, he felt a sense of peace. Tara wasn't pressuring him or demanding more than he could handle. She was simply there, waiting patiently, offering him a chance to heal. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Tara's connection continued to grow. They spent more time together, sharing meals, long conversations, and moments of quiet understanding. Jack couldn't deny the feelings that were developing between them, but a part of him still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, Emma would return. Then one afternoon, as Jack was driving back from work, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I'm coming back home. I want to talk." Jack pulled over to the side of the road, his heart racing as he read the message again. It was from Emma. Emma stood outside the house she had once called home, her heart pounding as she stared at the front door. It looked the same, yet everything about it felt different. She had been gone for 5 months, and in that time, her world had shifted in ways she never could have imagined. Taking a deep breath, Emma rang the doorbell, hoping against hope that Jack would answer. But when the door finally opened, it wasn't Jack who stood there. It was a young couple looking confused. "Can I help you?" the man asked politely. Noticing Emma's hesitation, Emma's heart sank. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I think there's been a mistake. This is my house, or it was." The couple exchanged glances before the woman spoke up. "We just bought this house a few weeks ago from a man named Jack." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Jack had sold their house? How could he? Her mind reeled as she tried to process the information. Everything she had left behind, everything she had hoped to come back to, was gone. Without another word, Emma turned and walked away from the house, her chest tight with a mix of regret and confusion. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected Jack to move on without her. Jack sat in his living room, staring at his phone. The message from Emma weighed heavily on his mind. She was coming back, and she wanted to talk. But what did that mean? Was she ready to fix their marriage, or was it too late? His mind raced with questions, but deep down, Jack already knew the answer. Things had changed. He had changed. In the months since Emma had left, Jack had found a new sense of stability in his life, a sense of peace that he hadn't known he needed. And then there was Tara, who had been by his side through it all. Tara, who had helped him heal, who had become more than just a friend. Jack couldn't deny the feelings he had for her, and the thought of hurting her felt unbearable. When Emma finally reached out to him, asking to meet, Jack agreed. They sat down at a small cafe, the tension between them thick as they exchanged awkward pleasantries. "I've missed you," Emma finally said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I made a mistake, Jack. I thought I needed freedom, but what I needed was you." Jack looked at her, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. "I missed you too, Emma," he said softly, "but things have changed." Emma's face fell, her eyes searching his for any sign of hope. "Change how?" Jack took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would change everything. "I've met someone," he admitted. "Her name is Tara, and we've become close. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did." Emma's heart shattered at his words. She had come back hoping to rebuild what they had lost, but now it seemed like Jack had already moved on. "I don't know what to say," Emma whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I thought we could fix this." Jack reached across the table, taking her hand gently. "I didn't want this either," he said, "but you left, and I had to find a way to move on. Tara's helped me through that." For a long moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. Emma wanted to scream, to beg Jack to take her back, but deep down she knew that things had changed. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with the consequences. "I just want you to be happy," Emma finally said, her voice thick with emotion. Jack squeezed her hand before letting go. "I want the same for you, Emma." After their conversation, Emma walked away from the cafe, her heart heavy with regret and sadness. She had lost Jack, and there was no going back. As she walked through the streets of the city, she realized that the freedom she had once craved had cost her everything she held dear. But Emma was determined not to let her mistakes define her. She had learned valuable lessons in her time away, and now she had to find a way to move forward. She would rebuild her life, piece by piece, and find her own path to happiness. Back at his apartment, Jack sat with Tara, their hands intertwined as they talked about their future. He had found peace, found love again, and while the road had been painful, he knew that this was where he belonged. In the end, both Emma and Jack had to learn the hardest lesson of all, that love, no matter how deep, cannot survive without trust, communication, and commitment. And while their paths had diverged, they would carry the lessons of their shared past with them as they moved forward, each finding their own way in a world full